Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from, because I know that we don't just have our audience in the UK, we have people from Nigeria, from Canada, from Netherlands. So wherever you're joining us from, welcome to the six parts series, Africaness series, and this is part 5 out of 6. We've had a lot of conversations around autism, around neurodivergence, around communication, around sensory needs for neurodivergent individuals. And in this part of the webinar series, we're talking about how to navigate, the challenges of parenting and raising a neurodivergent child, especially if you are in the UK, right? Because we know that there are quite a number of hurdles, there are quite a number of gaps in the system, and especially within our community, we've had, some members of our community who struggle to understand the pathway to finding support, the pathway to asking for diagnosis for their children, and, generally how to support their child in this whole process. Being a parent in itself is quite challenging. I'm a parent myself to two children, and then being a parent to a child who has additional need is even more challenging. Then being a parent to a child who has additional need, yet you don't know who to talk to, where to go to, and how to find support for your child is even more challenging. So this evening, to do justice to this conversation and to answer some of the questions that we have, is someone that I believe has knowledge in the industry. I mean, from her history of being a GP to also being a parent to neurodivergent children herself, and to working with families and communities, providing trainings and support. We have Dr. Gillian Rogers to help us do justice to this conversation. I've got a lot of questions for her, and she's going to answer those questions. Please, if you have questions while we progress with this conversation, do drop your questions in the chat as you remember them so you don't forget, and hopefully we'll get to answer all your questions at the end. So Dr. Gillian Rogers is the retired GP and founder of Autism Arena, which is a community interest charity. Dr. Gillian is a dedicated advocate for families navigating the complexities of neurodiversity. As a parent of autistic and neurodivergent children and someone with acquired neurodivergence following a stroke 10 years ago, Dr. Gillian brings both professional expertise and lived experience to her work. Drawing on her skills as a former GP, she recognized the challenges parents face in securing the right support for their children. This led her to establish Autism Arena CIC, a platform designed to empower parents and carers with the knowledge and tools to navigate the system effectively. Dr. Gillian has been awarded National Lottery Community Funding to further her impactful work with families. In addition, she delivers neurodiversity training to businesses, promoting inclusive practices and generating support for her mission to help children reach their full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Gillian. Welcome, Dr. Gillian. Welcome to this conversation. We're so happy to have you, and we're so happy to draw from your wealth of experiences, because there's the experience, there's the expertise, and you have both. And we're so honored to have you and to have this conversation with you, right? So I'll just dive right into it. I'll just ask a few questions. These are questions that have come true based on the conversation and our engagement with parents in our community, right? So I'll start by asking, as a parent, I mean, you're a parent of an autistic individual and you're also a professional. What has been your most significant challenge in navigating the UK support system for neurodivergent children?
Well, hi, good evening. Um, To me, I think there was lots of things when I started to consider whether my son was autistic, because the first thing was just noticing differences, and then thinking, "Oh, have I got training in this? Is this something that I know about?" And thinking, trying to think from a professional perspective. All I wanted to do was understand my child's needs, and getting him the right support. And I needed to understand the systems. And what I actually found was when I spoke to school, the teachers, I actually felt that they would know more about this area than what I did, and realised that they didn't actually know more about the area than I did. But I also felt a little bit like, because my child masked a lot in school, presented very differently at home to how he was at school. And it was that feeling believed that, am I
Mm,
making this up? And for them to take me seriously, that actually, no, he has got a problem. and
mm,
and and I don't know whether they just thought I was being a sort of high expectation parent,
mm.
and they were trying to lower my expectations, and it
Yeah,
wasn't right. It was just about trying to get the right thing for my child, which I knew, you feel inside is
yeah,
true for them.
yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because many children are likely to mask in school because of the expectations that come with school. I mean, they're expected to sit still, they're expected to behave, and they're expected to do their work. But a child will then come home after that full day of masking and then unleash. So it's literally looking like the child at home is a totally different person for the child from the child in school, and that can be quite tricky, especially when you're trying to communicate with the school.
Yes.
Um, how long ago was this? And do you think that since then there has been an improvement? Because I mean, you work with parents and you still communicate with schools. Do you think that from the time when you had this experience, I mean, you said that teacher, you felt like they should have known better than you did, but
Mhm.
that wasn't quite the case. Do you think that from then till now that there has been an improvement in terms of, bringing teachers up to speed as to what the needs of neurodivergent pupils might look like in the school and in the classroom?
Yes, absolutely. This happened in 2020 in lockdown, and
Mm,
so it was a very difficult scenario anyway, when sort of teachers weren't actually seeing him there, but their memory of him, and when school would open up for a short period of time before we had lockdowns again, there was just quite short gaps where it wasn't really, people weren't getting a big enough um, getting a good enough picture. But my experience now is 4 years later, nearly 5 years on, it's nearly 2025, that yes, there's much more awareness in school about neurodivergence. And when I speak to teachers, they note it, they obviously, that increased awareness, not just from their perspective, but parents have an increased awareness, so parents are raising it as a concern as well. And so
mm,
there is a much more recognition that more adjustments need to be made in school. And I say definitely there's been like a boom of neurodivergence in the last 5 years, and it's
yeah,
fabulous because people are wanting to learn and wanting to know the difference, and to understand, because it is about the child at the end of the day, and being
yeah,
able to learn. And if we think about like learning pyramids, to that's a very basic level of people having their sensory world right for them, and being able to move around in their world, leads on to being able to sit and to be able to learn, really,
learn,
whichever
yeah,
format that they're learning from. But
yeah,
yeah, it's very important. So it is important to get it right. So it's fabulous. We
yeah,
definitely are much better and much more aware, and much definitely looking for training. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much. I remember carrying out a research in 2021, and that research was to explore the barriers to accessing autism diagnosis by Black African parents within the UK. And I remember interviewing quite a number of people. And what struck me was that many people or many parents that I interviewed, these are parents who have children who are autistic, and parents who have gotten diagnosis, and some of them who are awaiting diagnosis. But for even the parents who had gotten diagnosis, for many of them, majority of them, they said that it was when they were given the diagnosis that was the first time they had heard the word autism. So that's to show you how, like, they for many people, yeah, they saw the needs, but they didn't know what it was. Many people had to take their children for hearing assessments, for speech assessments and stuff, but people did not know. They couldn't place their hand. They were not aware of what autism was, right? So that brings me to the question: how did you first recognize your child's neurodivergence, and what steps did you take to seek support?
Well, I first noticed it because it was locked down, because his behaviour was not as I would expect. So when we were at home, he was very much sticking to the teacher's routine that they'd sent home, and like it was to the minute. Like, we finish a little bit of work and let's go outside. No, we've not to be outside until say 1:15. And he was started wearing his uniform. The other children were in casual clothes. He would wear his uniform. And then it became, we'd wear it at the weekends, and we'd go for a family walk and was still wearing a uniform, and it's locked down, and it was, and if people would stop and want to talk to me or say hello, he would be dragging and pulling at me and just not wanting to let me engage. And a lot of things became a little bit more sort of obsessive compulsive. Let's say the hand washing, the sort of anxiety around became quite elevated. And so there was just lots of differences, and sitting, trying to interact with the laptop to do schoolwork. I could see other children were engaging with the whiteboard and just sitting quite relaxed and engaging with the teacher, whereas he couldn't find, it was that not knowing where his body position was in space, and kept moving up, down, moving around, and there was just so many barriers to his learning that just it was very difficult.
Yeah.
So the first step was, I guess, because I was aware of autism, but actually there's a lot of steps sort of to process that as a parent as well, to think, actually, are they, is that what's the cause? There's a cause for this. And because I had access to it, I got the manual for the criteria, the diagnostic criteria, and basically went through that. I went, tick, 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 thinking, okay, it's got enough ticks that I'll refer for an assessment. But I understand that everybody has got these tools, which is part of why we set up Autism Arena, so that we can say to people that this is the sort of the angle what we're looking at, and there's a behavioural difference.
All right, yeah. So at Autism Arena, are you able to tell? I know you don't assess, but are you able to tell someone to say, well, we suspect, more like a screening? So if I had a child that had needs or is different, right? If I come to you, would I be able to walk out from that meeting or interaction with an understanding of what is going on? Are you able to tell me that, well, from what we're seeing or from what I have explained, this looks like this, right? Even though that is not a clinical diagnosis, are you able to give a parent that kind of information?
I think it's about signposting people. So when people have got so somebody's got a child that they don't understand what's going on, or they're sort of picking up the challenges, and it's sort of unpicking those challenges and sort of suggesting, we'll say, that sounds like a processing problem, that sounds like an executive functioning problem, and sort of breaking it down a little bit and making suggestions about how they can support the child and get the criteria, strategies in place, and then saying, it might be worthwhile exploring whether they speaking to school, to the Senko, and see if there's enough evidence to support whether there's potential to gather evidence. Potentially this could be ADHD, or potentially this could be autism. I'm not qualified to diagnose, but I can certainly recognise in what behaviours are to suggest where the angle people should go, trying to gather more evidence that would support a diagnosis, and it'd be worthwhile going down that route.
Yeah, and that's helpful, isn't it? Because I mean, you just mentioned something that piqued my interest, and that is gather evidence. Because if you're going to the school to say, actually, I think there should be an adjustment for my child, what the school is going to ask for is evidence, right? They're going to ask, why do you think your child need so and so adjustments? Why should we do that? And in cases where you need an EHCP, it's also about evidence, both from school and from the home, right? So I know I'm drifting a bit, but like when you say gather evidence, if I'm a parent with an autistic child, what does gathering evidence look like?
Okay, gathering evidence would look like, okay, you start to think, oh, there's something's not right, or there's something I'm not sure about. Okay, let's work out what's going on. So it's better from the beginning to spend the time gathering the evidence. To say somebody might be really keen to refer for a diagnosis, but I always think you're going to be in a queue for quite a waiting list for some time. It's much better to gather to create a stronger referral letter. So if you let's spend the next 3 months observing in different scenarios. So if we're thinking, is it, say, a sensory issue? So we would look at, how do they react in certain environments in school? Ask the teachers to observe them in the playground. What do they do when they're in the playground? What do they do when when they're sitting doing work? Or if there's been a big sort of teaching at the front, and then they have to sit down and do the work. How do they manage to then sit down and do the work after a lot of teaching? Can they switch between the two? Are they restless, or do they need to get up and move around? What's going on in different scenarios? So it's not just the teachers, but if there's other people involved. So if there's after school clubs, before school clubs, nursery, there's different environments where, if there might be somebody separate takes them to do PE, or somebody does a music lesson. Does everybody
involved?
Get everybody and just ask them very specific questions. And I think not to overcomplicate it, but just specific things.
So are the responses supposed to be documented, or pictures, or like, I'm just like, if I'm a parent, for a parent who is listening, I'm wondering, how do I put this evidence together? Because then if I have asked all these questions and it's your word against mine, and if I'm having a pushback with the school, especially in an instance where the child is behaving or masking in school, how do I then put that evidence across? So am I supposed to document to say this teacher has said he does this, or am I supposed to make a video? Am I supposed to take a picture and gather all of that? I don't know if you get what I mean. Like, or is it just, to take that word back to the school, or back to whoever is supporting with the referral, to then say, this is what I have noticed over a period of 3 months, for example.
Yeah, so you can gather evidence in any way that you wish, whichever way works for you. But even just an email from a person, send somebody an email and say, have you noticed this? Or, have you had any concerns around this? So how do they behave in this particular scenario? I find this at home. Have you spotted that? Could you watch out for things like that and just feedback to me? And if it just even might just be like a one line going, I notice that they stand on the edge until they feel comfortable, or they might just do a couple of little lines, and that's enough. But it's gathering the picture from lots of different people and people are saying similar types of things, that you start to go, okay, there's a pattern developing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would then be helpful for putting in a strong referral if you want to get a diagnosis. That's
Yeah.
so helpful. Thank you. I didn't even know about that. I didn't know the evidence part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
that's
evidence
so
is
helpful.
crucial. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So for a parent who is listening, who doesn't have an idea of what an EHCP is, right? Can you let us know what an EHCP is, and can you explain the process of applying for one? Because we have had instances where maybe parents are in that situation where their child is struggling in school and they're being told that their child needs an EHCP and they're just at loss as to what to do or what an EHCP even means.
Yeah. Quite often there's lots of abbreviations get used and nobody knows what they mean. It's awkward. But yes, it stands for Education Health Care Plan. And it's interesting if school teachers were recommending for somebody to apply for one, then that's a sign that they've gathered evidence and probably put things in place, because there's criteria for it to a certain extent that you would expect somebody to do. So make some adjustments and see how the child has responded to that, and sort of do these sort of cycles. So but legally it's different. So like legally it's a document to tell what the child's needs are and what should be in place, so that any child who is suspected of having a special educational need should be assessed. But in practice, it tends to be that, if again back to evidence for this as well, that if there's evidence that things have been put in place and the child is still not meeting, it's not say not progressing, it's still needing support with the social, emotional, learning needs, then they're looking to gather. They get further assessed if you. So it's the local. You would actually contact the local authority, and they would do an assessment. So an educational psychologist comes in, and other people, they might gather other evidence from other people, like a speech and language therapist or an occupational therapist, whatever is presenting. They might gather other evidence, and that all gets put together to decide whether the child does need to go down the pathway for an education health care plan, or whether actually enough things have been recommended by these people that if they're implemented, that might be enough for the child. So that to put those things in place and see if that makes the difference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's
That's
actually what can be done at school level is quite high. So you can get it's like a smaller package, which is quite a package, but you get an individualized education plan, and they
yeah,
can be reviewed like termly. But they
yeah,
are just like small snippets of things where if we do this, we'll see if they'll improve from doing that. So
yeah,
I think if you start building up pictures and you've done that for a little while, that you're gathering evidence that things are getting put in place and things are not progressing for them,
yeah.
then maybe
Yeah, and
further.
a lot of local authorities are also at the place where they're now working with schools to make that reasonable adjustment for children who are struggling within the school, so that it doesn't get to the point of an EHCP and all of that.
Yeah, yeah, I think yes, because I think there's just so much that can be put in place in school without having to go down the route.
Mm.
So certainly, my son doesn't have an EHCP, but it's quite incredible what's in place for him. So it's amazing that it doesn't need to be that way, but certainly in some environments, it is the most appropriate thing for some children. It is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, right? So because I mean, your son has that reasonable adjustment in school, I believe, because and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe because to a reasonable extent, you knew what to ask for and you were
Yeah.
able to advocate for your child. But we have people in our community who don't even know what to ask for,
Yes.
who don't know how to communicate or present their needs to teachers or to advocate for their children. What would you what would you recommend? Where do you think they should start? What documents do you think they should look at, or how do you think they should approach that? Or what advice would you give to them? You know, for example, a parent who finds out that their child is struggling in school, what conversations should they have with the school to make sure that they're advocating for their child so that their child can get the support that they need within the school?
Yeah, I think there's two areas is really to speak with the school, with the class teacher, and speak to the special educational needs coordinator, because it might be things that they might have noticed as well, or actually hadn't noticed, but now it's been brought to their attention. We go, actually, that does fit with something else that would tie in with that. And again, it's about they start to build a picture. Now, the SENCO, the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, they can do assessments for things as well. So if you're concerned about processing, could do like a processing assessment, or if some to do with sensory issues, can do some sensory profiling and make adjustments. To do with lots of some of the language and being able to. Sometimes children are difficulty expressing how they're feeling, and they can help with that as well. And there's different tools that they've got for helping children. So I think definitely the first place to go is to speak with your school teacher and the special educational needs coordinator, and arrange a meeting with them and just highlight what your concerns are, and you think there's maybe part of a bigger picture, and like exploring and see what they can offer.
Yeah, I suppose, like, as a parent, you just have to know that you have to make that move for your child, because if you don't, then your child wouldn't get the support that they need, isn't it? You have to, and in the journey of being a parent to a neurodivergent, there's a lot of advocacy involved. Like,
Yes.
you just have to become that person who knows their rights, who knows what to ask for,
Yeah.
and who is confident enough to ask. If not, you're gonna have much more struggle than necessary.
Yes.
If I put it that way. Have you been in a position, or have you had a client who has been in a position where they faced resistance from the school? I mean, your story when you started, I'm sure you faced a little bit of resistance because of the disparity in behavior at home and in school. But um, if a parent has done what you just said, going to the Senko to ask for that support and that reasonable adjustment for their children in school, and they face a resistance, what would you say would be the right approach to navigate that? Because we have had instances where parents have had situations where they felt like the school was actually at them and their children, and it escalated into what it shouldn't have been, right? So in an instance where you're making all these efforts to advocate for your child and you feel like you're facing some resistance, and you're hitting your head against the wall and they're not listening, what's the right approach? Is there any process for escalation? Is there any pathway for escalation in that whole process?
There's a few things that can happen. So at school level, I'm sure you'll be able to escalate it, even if it's to concerns, whether it be a complaints procedure, or speaking to contacting the special educational needs governors of the school as well, potentially even the head teacher. There will be an escalation policy within the school. There is if you really were concerned that they needed support and it absolutely wasn't being addressed from the school end, you can apply for an EHCP without the school being involved, and it's more slightly more challenging because school then have to create the report. I think they've got 2 weeks to do that, so it's a kind of a difficult thing. So I think they would prefer to be involved, but you can. There's a form that you can that comes directly from parents, and actually young people when they're slightly at high school, a bit older, in primary school, they can apply themselves. There's a separate EHC form for young people, parents, or professionals. To apply for it as well, and it's getting advice from other people, because there are teams like the Sendias team and IPSE, IPSEA, and they both Sendias and IPSE, they can contact teams for support. They make themselves available quite often at the Leeds Library. That they have regular drop-in sessions, but also you can phone them and they can actually come to meetings at school as well. At certain times of the year, I think sometimes when they're busy they can't accommodate that, but sometimes of the year they can. So there are other support from other people that you could just go, actually, I'm really not happy with this. I want to take this further. And it's almost like looking at legal advice, really, from like Sendias and IPSE will give you good advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you measure that your child, because based on personal experience, right? Some parents might get less support, and maybe based on their bad experiences over time, they just accept that because it's better than nothing, right? But then that support isn't actually up to standard as what the child needs to thrive. So is there any way, or are there any things that a parent should look out for, or any metrics for measuring that um the support their child is getting in school is actually what it should be, or any metrics for measuring that that support is working for their child? What would that be?
Yeah, so I don't know about the first one, but for the second one, certainly, if you have an individualized education plan, IEP, I'm sure it's termly. You're supposed to meet with the parents and school, and they're smart, measured, like specific, measurable. I can't.
Time,
Oh,
time
yeah,
bound.
yeah. It's about Friday night brain on, and yeah, so there will be, yes, there will be set. Will there be something that should be achievable? So if they're not making that progress, then it is that sort of looking that actually maybe they do need support. But obviously these IEPs do need to be fit for purpose as well. They do need to be recognising what the difficulties are as well to try and help. So it's not saying that they will automatically be correct, because obviously if it's coming from a person who isn't so understanding of the needs, then it might not be correct. So you can I just with school clusters as well. I'm just sort of thinking where else to go. If on the Leeds local offer on the website, there is about the school clusters, and even the school will be able to tell you about the school cluster, and you can always contact them. And there's like family support workers, there's counsellors, speech and language therapists. All the clusters can have access to different types of people, and you can just say, I would like to be referred to help from another professional, and you can get there's a children with additional needs team as well. So if there is that, if they've got, I guess if they've got a diagnosis really at that stage, but there are other professionals that
And all of these professionals, are they accessible through the local council website, or where do we find them? Because that's the thing, right? I believe that there's a lot of support, but where do I find them? I mean, we're having these conversations and, you're telling us about this support, but let's imagine that there is a parent who didn't come to this webinar and who doesn't have access to this information and who has just found out that their child is neurodivergent. Where is the best place to look for information that will be helpful for that parent, if you get what I mean?
Yes. Oh, that's not an easy question,
I
actually.
know,
It's
I
really,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And but I would probably say start with the Leeds local offer. So every area will have a local offer page, and we'll have in that lots of information about different specialties, different needs, different ways like help your own child. So I definitely explore it. They are a little bit like a maze. Once you go into them, there's can be lots and lots of information. So I would definitely go start having a little look at that, and educating as well. It's if I'm just thinking about the we attend schools for like coffee morning, like doing workshops, but other people do as well. So Daisy Chain is as well, the Autism Central charity, an NHS sort of link is, and they do training sessions around the place as well. And they sometimes go to the Leeds Library as well. So there is thing of looking out for help from other people as well.
Yeah.
Give advice,
Correct.
but it's a little bit like you just need somebody to tell you what to do,
Yeah,
isn't it? And
yeah, yeah.
I think
Well,
that's
that's why you're here, and that's why Africanness is here as well. I'm just like I'm just asking as a parent
yeah,
because sometimes, it can really be overwhelming having all this challenge and wondering who do I go to, where do I go to, and is there a central place where I can find the information that I need? Because handling a child who is struggling is overwhelming. So, having that challenge and then having to add research to the mix, I'm thinking like in a situation where this information is streamlined and then people can actually go find the information they need in a more easy way in an ideal world. But
yeah, and an idea.
I,
I think we've probably always come back to the local offer page. I think
yeah,
that's where to go to, and
that's
each
helpful.
area has a parent carer forum as well. So there's a Leeds parent carer forum. So there's a York, Bradford. They've all got an individual parent carer forum, and it also to contact them, and they might be able to point you in the right direction as well, because
Yeah.
whether it be different support groups around the city as well, sort of parent groups,
Mm.
and that can be quite useful as well. Like in Leeds as well, there's a zigzag parent carer group as well for autistic children. There's a Leeds Send parent carer group. They're all slightly different names, and it can be a bit confusing, but they're certain, and they're all on Facebook. So there is a thing as well of going and just sort of linking up with other
All
parents,
the parents, yeah, and
and speaking to other people as well can be really quite helpful.
yeah, yeah. So are there like advocacy trainings or programs that you recommend for parents who want to better navigate the system? Because, um, for example, for parents who have just migrated to the UK, who do not understand the system, who might lack the skill to advocate for their children, are there like trainings that you can recommend for them to take so that they're aware of how to navigate, or are there like tips or strategies you can give them right away so that they know how to actually advocate for their children?
The only program I know you're running a program, Afrikindness, but the is the Signet program that's run through the Barnardos fund that, and it's run through the local authority. So I think that'd be through the Senko teams as well. There's also a really good charity. I can't believe I've not mentioned them before. It's just come into my head. It's Stars, which is a really good autism charity in Leeds. They're excellent, and they do an awful lot of online training as well. So it's capital STARS. So definitely have a look at STARS online as well, and they do offer good information too.
So, looking ahead, we've spoken a lot about the all of the challenges, which is really the reality, and programs like this we're helping with trying to tackle those challenges. I mean, the more people are aware, the more people are informed, then the less the struggle. But let's look ahead a bit. What changes or improvements do you hope to see in the system supporting neurodivergent children and their families?
There's lots going on in the city at the minute, and it's really wonderful. Actually, there's so many charities and the teams. The Intermediate Care Board are really passionate about making a difference and making a change. So the city very much is on a trajectory to be a very inclusive city, and it is about training and education, and there's a lot more getting rolled out. So in like hospitals, for those the Oliver McGowan training, so it's health and social care are all going to be trained in the Oliver McGowan training, autism awareness training. I don't know, actually if people are aware, there's the autism passports that people can fill in for Leeds teaching hospitals. So it's information all about sensory differences and communication differences, things like that. It's quite a big document. It's about 12 pages. It is a decent size, but if it's filled in, and you can email it or post it into Leeds teaching hospitals, they will upload it onto the system. So if an autistic person attends A&E or has to go for an appointment, then there's a team that can come and help with any needs that they've got. Well, if they need to come in for a procedure, then they can do like desensitization visits or come and do visits beforehand to get used and understand what's going ahead. So there's lots of things like that going on in the city. The sensory packs in A&E that people can ask for. But I think it's very much about making the adjustments in school so that to normalise differences.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing, and to teach people at a young age that everybody is different, and we've all got different things that we like and dislike, and maybe we need strategies or a way that we prefer to do things, and we're not all like Victorian era that we sit in straight lines and this is how we behave, and that's not real, but that's sort of almost like where it's sort of come from.
There's someone in the chat who is saying, have you come across parents, especially mothers, being accused of fabrication and induced illness when asking for help?
That's a big thing. That's a big thing at the minute. Yes. There's an interesting charity called Sunshine Support. They're based in Derbyshire. And the founder of that, I think, had been charged or accused of that. And so it's really from the back of that has set up Sunshine Support. So that might be worth on social media following that charity. But yes, that is a big area, but it's something that I've not personally been involved with. So I've not had that.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yeah, someone says Sunshine Support, they are great. Thank you for that contribution. So yeah, Mary, you asked that question about being accused. So if you would take note of that charity, it's usually the charities that are born out of lived experiences. They are very passionate. So if the founder of Sunshine Support had that experience, then she must be passionate about helping and supporting moms navigate that. So yeah. You want to look at that. So thank you. In the absence of any other questions, while I'm looking at the chat to see if any other questions comes in the absence of any other questions, I would say thank you very much. You've shared, quite a lot of things, and you pointed us quite to quite a number of, websites and resources and stuff, and that is quite helpful. And especially what you said about gathering evidence, that is very, very helpful for me because it is one thing to say this is what I think, or this is, coming to advocate for my child in school. But if I haven't done that diligence of gathering evidence, then everything I say can be watered down. But
Mhm,
if I put my case strongly, then I
mhm,
have a better chance of being heard and a better chance of getting what I need for my child. So that is very, very helpful. And I hope that if every other person finds it as insightful as I did. So yeah, thank you very much for coming. We will make a few announcements, and in the absence of any other questions, we'll call it a day. So this is Autism Arena, and Dr. Gillian is the founder of Autism Arena. Search out for her on LinkedIn. Um, she has helpful resources. She conducts trainings and she can signpost you if you have any challenge around autism. So please, on LinkedIn, Autism Arena, or herself, Gillian Rogers, Dr. Gillian Rogers, she's on LinkedIn. Please do follow and do engage with the amazing work that she is doing. Please, we have a survey and this survey is around your feedback, right? With this webinar, did you find it helpful? You find this conversation helpful in your journey of navigating the challenges around parenting a neurodivergent child? Please kindly take the survey for us. We would like to hear your feedback as that helps us make improvements or adjustments where necessary. So we would like to hear from you about your feedback on this episode of this webinar series. Yeah, we have amazing resources. When we started, I mentioned that this webinar is a 6-part series, and this is the 5th series. So all the previous series, we upload them on our website. You can find the link on the website. And besides the recording of the webinars, we also have amazing, amazing resources that would help you. Even Dr. Gillian has sent in some resources and some links to her website and links to other helpful websites and resources, and we collate them and put them on that website. So this is our own bit in trying to make sure that there is a central place where you can go to and find the information and the signposting or the support that you need. Please just scan the QR code or use the link in the chat to get to that resources page. If you're a parent of a neurodivergent child, you might want to bookmark it on your computer and just have it there for references whenever you whenever you need it, right? So we have this research that we're conducting, right? And we need your input. We need you to take this survey. It's just a 5 to 7 minutes survey, and we're trying to understand how Black African children are supported with their racial identities at home and within the community. We have come up with these questions. It's just simple questions that you need to answer to help us conduct a research and come out with a research output. Because at the foundation of the work that we're doing in Africanness is to foster positive racial identity for our children and to make sure that our children feel supported and included. And we want all of our work to be based on research, to be based on evidence. So we need your help, right? We need your help to actually come out with a research output, and that will inform the future work that we want to do within the community. So yeah, just scan the QR code, and the link is also in the chat if you want to take that survey. Not if you want to, we would love you to take the survey. We want everyone here to just take it. Just takes from 5 to 7 minutes, and you'll be able to do that for us, won't you? Thank you. And we have this event coming up. Is a live in-person event, and it is one of our initiatives, because one of the things we have been doing, because we're trying to raise awareness and to expand this information as to as many people as possible. We are collaborating with community leaders to train them, and then to have them train their community members. So we're having this. We have done a series of cohorts on training community leaders on safeguarding, and now some of those community leaders are now facilitating these trainings within their community, and we want to invite you, right, for this session. Please come in and learn about safeguarding, learn about how to protect your children and keep them safe within the community. This is a collective effort, right? I mean, there's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child, and we're all responsible for the children in our community, and we need to keep them safe and safeguard them. So please show up if you can. All the details are on this flyer. Do show up, and let's have this conversation. And we have this conference coming up. It's part of our community awareness program, and for our parent team, the purposeful parents training, and it's termed the power of play. It's a one-day parenting workshop, and it's also a live in-person event, and it promises to be very, very engaging, very, very insightful, experts conversations around play therapy, around engaging our children, around parenting in this time and age. A lot of fun, networking, and family bonding. So please, we would love you to come in. I will be there. I'll be speaking at that event as well. So we would love you to come in. All the details are on the flyer. You can scan the QR code. I believe that the link is also in the chat box, right? So please do come in, and let's have fun while learning. And we have an amazing community where we provide information like this one, provides resources for parents and families who have autistic children. We have a community on WhatsApp, and you can join that community where we engage, where you can ask your questions, where you can, if you're struggling with advocacy, you can come into the community and share, and we will find ways to support you. We share resources there. We share information about our events for neurodivergent parents raising neurodivergent children. So please, that is the best way to actually engage with us and the work we're doing around neurodiversity. So please do scan the QR code and join that community. And please don't leave this webinar without following us on our social media handles. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter, all Africanness. And also, you can go to our website. There are lots of information and resources about the work we do. We don't just do work around neurodiversity. We do work around education. We do work around research. We do work around parenting. So please go to our website and engage with all of the amazing resources that we have provided for you there. If you need to contact us, just send an email to hello@africanness.com, info@africanness.com, sorry. And this event, or this webinar, is our 6-part webinar series, series 5. So we have one more to go, and we look forward to still having you in that final part, but that won't be the end of all of the amazing things that we have lined up for you. But we'll still have that conversation coming, and it's this whole series, webinar series, and the amazing work that we're doing with the Africanist Neurodiversity Community Program is proudly funded by Leeds Community Foundation and Sir George Martin Trust, and we are really grateful to them for making the funds available for us to be able to put this beautiful event together for you and for myself and for all of us, right? So thank you once again for being part of this webinar. Can we take one more question? We have 5 minutes, and I've seen that a question has come in while I was making the announcement. So with your permission, Dr. Gillian, can we take that one final question before we cut?
You can. I better say as well that I'm funded by the National Lottery to thank the National Lottery players. So yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you so much. So this person says, I am having challenges getting my son with ADHD into school despite being granted the preferred school through appeal about 6 weeks ago. Any advice how to go about this? So I don't know if it's school avoidance or something, but this parent is struggling with getting their child back into school. Do you have any advice or recommendation as to what she can do?
Yeah, difficult. It's really challenging. I think that it's really difficult to work out what it is that's the child is struggling with. So the behaviours obviously say is the communication that they're not happy with something, and it will be that there's not the right adjustments in place, and it's working out what the adjustments need to be in place. And if it's at the stage of really struggling to get them in, there's you really could do with having somebody that they trust, like a safe person that they can meet potentially at the school gate, and would take them in and
Mm-hmm.
probably peel things right back to actually not having much demands. So maybe just potentially going in for a short period of time and building back up to a day
Yeah,
or a week, is a huge thing. But it might just be a bit. It's going to take some conversations with the Senko and with the
yeah,
learning support team in school. But it is a big challenging area. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not
yes.
straightforward.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, isn't it? So, well, if you're still here and you're still listening, I think that you want to pay attention to the child in front of you and what their needs are telling you. It's really about the child. If the child is not in the right state of mind emotionally, they're going to struggle to learn. Even if you manage to force them into the school, that will be a traumatic experience for them. And it could also be that they have had a lot of bad experiences with education, that they are at the place where they no longer trust the system. So, like what Dr. Gillian said, is then to start building that trust back up to then say, well, actually, this is a new provision and it's not the same with, where you're coming from, or it will not be the same experience with, what you have had before. Reduced timetables work very well if the provision is able to provide some one-on-one support within the school environment. That might be something to explore as well. But I suppose the most important thing in this whole conversation is to really have a conversation with your child, from a place of curiosity, from a place of trying to understand what is going on in their head and how the stories they're telling themselves and how they're interpreting all of the things that are going on around them. It can be too much for them as well. So just listen, and then it's one step at a time, I suppose. And we wish you well. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Dr. Gillian. Thank you all for listening and for participating. And to our funders, we say a very big thank you and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Bye.